Ready.
Another Saturday. Wait. Okay.
I'm hooked on a feeling. No, that's not the show.
I didn't hit record yet. Okay. That day the squirrel went berserk in the First South Baptist Church.
Someone don't look. It was too late.
All right, I'm hitting record now.
Okay, hit record.
All right. I don't know how I'm going to start.
Okay.
Hey there, good morning. Another edition of the 710 Show this beautiful Saturday morning. I'm Wendy LaBree.
And I'm Brian Groff, and thank you very much for joining us again. So our show today, we're going to be talking about recalls. Now, we've done this before, but unfortunately, there's a lot of recalls that come out, and some of them will bypass. Heck, some of them, I even get letters in the notices in the mail for the recalls, and I bypass. Well, although on the show, I tell you don't do that. I'm just a little slow getting it done, just like everybody else.
Well, some of them are only as big as maybe you have a windshield wiper that's going to rust prematurely, and you need to have the arm replaced. That's a recall to some manufacturers, but that's not the case in some arenas.
That's not the case. So we came across this recall. It's actually a big deal because it involves a fire out of nowhere, and a fire. Be it a house fire, be it a car fire, be it any kind of a fire, obviously that's extremely scary.
Less severe.
Right.
Yeah.
Because you're talking about a force that is uncontrollable, certainly out of your realm, unless you're a fireman. And so when a fire breaks out and you're driving 75 miles an hour down the road and all of a sudden your car catches fire, there's a lot of things that kind of go through your mind. And
you think?
And if you've got a family in that car and pets in that car,
those are the only things that are going through your mind to get them out.
There's a lot of things that you're going to have to do in a very short period of time. So we came across this recall, and we're going to be talking about two manufacturers, which are all kind of intertwined anyways.
Yeah, we'll explain that as well.
Hyundai and Kia. We're going to give years. We're going to give specific cars, and we're going to talk about what's causing the fires, or at least what they think is causing the fires.
And that's what's prompting us to do this show, is there's a lot of speculation.
And we're going to talk about some of the repairs or some of the things that they have changed to remedy this. Then we're going to talk about the first recall, and then the recall on the recall, because the recall didn't fix it. And
let's just start this way. Last week, and this would be last Thursday, NHTSA, which is the National Highway Traffic and Safety Administration, one of the leaders in why our cars are so safe now is the regulations they put into place. They added another 500,000 cars to a 3.5-year recall string for failures and fires. So worldwide, we're looking at over 1.5 million vehicles from two manufacturers, Hyundai and Kia. Now, Hyundai and Kia are run as separate business units, but they share a corporate parent. Their cars also often share parts, design, and engineering. So keep that in mind. They have separate corporate entities, but they use the same parts and components.
Which is not unusual, just to let you know.
At all.
Ford and Mazda, Chevy, Toyota, Chrysler and Mitsubishi. There's certain manufacturers that will kind of take from each other.
Right.
It keeps costs down, although you don't know that or you don't see that when you go to buy the vehicle.
Until you start having problems across two manufacturers that are paralleling each other and they can't figure out what's going on. Now, the recalls that NHTSA instituted against Hyundai and Kia started back in 2015. They've been under investigation for these problems, and not only that, they're under investigation for being too slow to fix the problems. And then when they do fix the problems, they're fixing the problem with another problem. So as Brian mentioned, there are recalls on recalls on recalls for Hyundai and Kia. What really got the attention of the American public was a recent fire, spontaneous combustion in the driveway of a family in Kissimmee, Florida. And it literally went up in flames while they were in the house chilling. The car had been sitting in the driveway for over 12 hours, if not more. And then all of a sudden was completely engulfed in flames to the point where they were just about to lose the side of their house, too. They lost their garbage cans. Now, back in February, in another part of Florida, another car spontaneously combusted. Same make and model, different years, but it did destroy the house and a few other things, displaced the woman. She ended up with smoke inhalation from the house fire because of the car. So these cars are spontaneously combusting, which is a big deal. But Brian, being as intelligent as he is when it comes to auto manufacturing and the technology that's going on, sees a lot of gray area in what's happening with these vehicles.
To me, there's no doubt why this problem keeps occurring. They're coming up with fixes and solutions to the problem. By no means am I an engineer, and understanding the different parameters within a computer system and what controls what and what it is that they're trying to do, those are the things that I don't understand. Now, I'm going to say I don't understand because by no means am I an engineer, and by no means do I know every component and every in and out of every part on every car.
But typical factors are, you don't have to be that much of a detective to put some things together, which is what you don't understand. And what recall do you want to start with? Because as you mentioned, with Hyundai and Kia, just recently, there's 3 major recalls that have occurred.
Well, let's talk about the cars that are spontaneously combusting at their house after the car's been sitting. Now, I'm going to list out 4 things that they think is the potential cause of these fires between Hyundai and Toyota, and only involving certain motors, the 2.4, the 1.6, and the 1.8, and covering certain years from 2011 to 2016. Okay, so if you're driving right now, you're listening to the show, and you're driving a Hyundai or a Kia, turn it up. Pull over.
Yeah, listen to this
really,
a little
really
bit.
listen to the show
But
here, or
understand,
know somebody that has one of these cars.
Well, and a lot of people do, but understand that these are specific year, make, and models, but we're just going to talk pretty generic about this. And we're going to give you the websites if you want to go ahead and research this on your own to find out if your particular VIN number is affected. So make sure you have your VIN number handy. But it is a little unnerving. It is happening. We're going to get into some other numbers about Hyundai.
Right. So they can say it's due to an oil pan leak issue. They say it's caused by a catalytic converter. They say it can be caused by an electric fan resistor. And they say it could be caused by a fuel line. So let's talk about the cars that have been sitting in a driveway for 10, 15 hours before going up in flames. They said it could have been a fuel line. Well, I'm not saying go and do this, but you could pop the hood on that car, and a car that's been sitting for 10, 12, 15 hours, and you can pour gasoline all over the top of it. It's not gonna burst into flames. There's no heat generated. There's no reason why that should happen. Now, talking about the fuel line, that was part of the recall to cover a mistake made by their first recall, because the engines that were being replaced within these cars then became or had a faulty fuel
They still
line.
had the same problem, yeah.
So the end result is still a fire within the engine compartment.
But what you're saying is, if it's had time to cool down, it is not fuel related.
It is not fuel related. It is definitely not fuel related. Now, if you're driving the car and you already had the recall done, which the first recall was an engine replacement, and you're driving down the interstate and you're building 220, 230 degrees under the hood of that car, and you have a fuel leak, yes, that is a problem, and yes, that is going to cause a fire.
And that is another recall.
Right.
So we're going to start with the stationary vehicles first, because the moving fires is a separate recall.
That is
so many things going on.
That is correct. Now, we can jump into the oil pan issue. Apparently, in the casting, and keep in mind when they do the casting of the block and the pans, we're talking about all aluminum. In my opinion, I think the problem comes back from the manufacturer in the casting of the block and or the oil pan or oil pans, because a lot of these will have a midsection oil pan and a lower oil pan. That midsection pan actually helps cradle part of the lower engine parts, like a crankshaft and connecting rods. But if those two flat aluminum surfaces aren't machined perfectly right, doesn't matter how much silicone they put in it, it's never going to seal up. But here's the thing, folks. We see a lot of cars come in the shop. 9 out of 10 cars are going to have some kind of an oil leak. And, of course, we're seeing cars that are far out of warranty. These are cars that you've had for 5, 6, 7, 10 years.
Well, we can just say Jeep.
100,000 miles.
I mean, Jeeps are known to just leak oil. And
so you have an exhaust pipe that runs underneath that engine, and what they're saying is that oil leak coming from the oil pan is leaking down on that hot exhaust and catching on fire. Well, there's a lot of oil leaks on a lot of cars that drip down on exhaust pipes, catalytic converters, And either we notice it when we're servicing the car or repairing the vehicle, or the customer may even come in and say, I get this strong odor, and you look, and it's because the exhaust system is coated in oil, and it's that burning oil. So it generates a lot of heat to create that fire. Now, that being said, talking about oil on exhaust, I kind of now want to get into the catalytic converter side of things.
Okay.
Because that can cause a fire. With the catalytic converter issue that they're having, it's building up too much exhaust temp.
Now, let me just say real quickly, this particular recall affects specific 2012 to 2016 Kia Souls that have the 1.6 liter direct injection gasoline engines.
Yes.
Okay, this particular recall for the catalytic converter that can cause the fires, this has been what's been happening while they're driving.
This is
This
correct.
is the moving recall, but very specific to 2012 to 16 Kia Souls. Now, mind you, again, Kia and Hyundai share parts.
Yes.
So this is where the issue is, the 1.6 liter direct injected gas engine.
Right.
So go forward, my
Okay.
friend.
All right. So there's a lot of things that are happening with this particular issue with the catalytic converters. A catalytic converter is designed to heat up to burn the unburned fuels within the exhaust system so that the ultimately coming out of the tailpipe is the cleanest emissions possible, keeping in mind that everything that the computer controls within the car itself and the sensors in the fuel system is for emission quality. Anytime a check engine light comes on, that is for emission quality. Okay, so what's happening is the catalytic converters are getting too hot. It's not recirculating the exhaust temp like it should. Now, there's a lot of moving parts that go along with this, to include an EGR system. I think we've all, or maybe we've all noticed or been in a car that as you are climbing a hill, you're accelerating more, you might get to hear a little bit of a knock, or what we call an octane ping, and that has to do with timing. So when we have uncombusted fuel, unburned fuel within the system, you're going to get that octane ping. There's a device that cars have used since the 80s called a NOx sensor, ever since fuel injection has come out. That NOx sensor is designed to change timing. It does exactly what it's called. It's a NOx sensor.
Right.
When it recognizes the knock within the combustion system, it will detect that and change the timing. What has happened here is that they have tried to put a vehicle in limp mode, and limp mode is just that. You are limping. If you twist an ankle, you are limping. Well, if your car's engine is not running properly, you're limping.
You're limping, yeah.
And that's all you can do. They're trying to change the timing to keep the exhaust temp down by adding fuel to keep the catalytic converter cool. Or they are using the NOx sensor to put the car in limp mode, and that can't happen.
Limp mode is very dangerous.
Well, it's
in its own right.
And I'm not going
I
to
say
say
it's dangerous in certain circumstances based on what we've talked about, but it is there for a purpose to safely get you off the road. Yes.
Let's put it that way.
Okay.
Because limp mode is just that. It's going to depower your vehicle and not allow you to continue to drive in the conditions that you're driving in order to exceed those limitations to begin with.
Right. So you're saying you can mash that pedal all the way down to the ground. You're not going to get any acceleration other than maybe an idle speed.
You can do that. There's actually a light on the dash for that. It's a lightning bolt with two backwards parentheses, and it's called a loss of power light.
Okay.
And we see this a lot in Dodge, Jeep, and Chrysler products. But every manufacturer has done this, and they've been able to do this since they've went to a fly-by-wire system on the accelerator. So you have an APP sensor, an accelerator pedal positioning sensor. It is nothing more than a small computer attached to a gas pedal that's sending a signal by a wire, not an actual cable, through the computer to tell the throttle body what to do based on your response on the gas pedal. If this system is working properly, you can mash that gas pedal to the floor and you're not going to go any further than what it's going to allow you to do just off of idle or at idle in itself.
Okay.
And it's just enough for you to safely to be able to keep power. They don't want the car to die. This car will continue to run at an idle because at an idle, you still have brakes and you still have steering. You have all the amenities that you need to be able to safely get off the side of the road. It's going to get you to the next exit. You can exit off the interstate. You can exit off of a major roadway to a side street safely and shut it down. Unfortunately, we do see a lot of customers that they use that limp mode to actually limp it into the shop. Well, if there is a shop close by from where you're breaking down, that is fine. But if not, you're going to have it towed because you're not going to make it from the north end to the south end of town
It's not going to
in
do
limp
it.
mode.
Yeah.
Now, some of the Chrysler products, they are able to turn the vehicle off, turn the key back on and start it, and that sometimes will reset the system. But if there's still a problem within the parameters of the computer system, that is not going to be a good thing.
Right, because you're just covering it up. It's a Band-Aid for that moment.
So let's go back to the specific issue with the catalytic converter.
Okay.
And why this recall, there's a lot of gray area. What was happening with the extra heated exhaust temp, an EGR system that it wasn't working, a timing system that it wasn't functioning properly, and an engine that's basically knocking due to unburned fuel, was causing the engine to explode.
Mm-hmm.
Literally come apart.
Yeah. Abnormal combustion is what they called it.
When a crankshaft, or excuse me, when a connecting rod comes disconnected from a crankshaft or from a piston, as much force is in that engine, those metal parts have to go somewhere. Sometimes they stay within the engine, sometimes they come out of the engine. And when they come out of the engine, they make beautiful large holes. It's quite a sight to see, actually. And you've got internal engine parts all over the place.
Yeah.
But most importantly, what's coming out with those metal parts inside is raw fuel and oil on hot exhaust, causing combustion, or causing a fire within the engine compartment. But obviously, when an engine grenades, what we call grenades, internally like that, you're not going to go anymore anyways.
Right,
The car immediately has stopped. It's not going to be running. You don't have any brake assist. You don't have any steering. You have just enough time to manhandle the steering wheel and get it off to the side of the road, and at that point exit the vehicle safely.
Yes.
You know your exit points, just like the stewardess on the flight.
Right.
You got one exit up front. Don't open that door for 30,000 feet. You got two more at the wings.
Yeah.
Make sure you're strong enough to
Well,
get everybody out.
What is so unfortunate about this is that if you drive a Hyundai or a Kia, and quite honestly, any year, make, and model Hyundai and Kia, and we'll tell you why here closer toward the end of the show, and it's devastating statistics if you ask me. You do need to have an exit plan. You do need to be prepared, especially if you have children in car seats in the back seat and something tragic like this starts to happen. There's been stories of people barely getting their children out of the car before the car was completely engulfed in flames. This is actually happening, and that's just one of the recalls that affected only Kia. So again, that was the 2012 to 16 Kia Souls with the 1.6-liter direct injected gasoline engines, that they do have a very high potential of blowing the engine and potentially starting a fire. Now we're going to go back to the oil pan leaks where Hyundai and Kia are involved in this recall. It just recently came out. It is affecting 2011 and 2012 Kia Sportage, and the Sportage are the ones that are spontaneously combusting in these people's driveways in Florida, both instances. So something to consider. Again, the year, make, and model. We can go back and talk about maintaining your vehicle, and what we're going to say right now is if you are driving basically any vehicle, be a good responsible owner and get the maintenance done. But if you're particularly driving a Hyundai or a Kia, you need to keep up on all of your maintenance records. I know that in the 10-year, 100,000-mile warranty, sometimes they throw in free oil changes. Do not pass that up. Do not pass go. Make sure that you get it done, because if something like this were to happen to you and you say, oh, well, no, I haven't had the oil changed in 3 or 4 months, you're done. It's
we were
your
talking
fault.
about that earlier, and the fact that that's why I say it's kind of a gray area, because if you don't maintain that car, maintain that engine, and get that oil change done, and you're driving under certain conditions, climbing a hill, you're putting power down on the
stress,
gas, and more to take care of that load, and that engine does start to knock and ping for various different reasons, and now you've got a less than adequate oil condition and level, and it causes the engine blow, because normally, folks, that's what causes things to kind of come apart in an engine, is because of the engine oil or their lack of. And so who's to say that you just haven't maintained that vehicle and all of a sudden the internal portions of that engine comes apart and that connecting rod goes out the side of the block and that hot oil and fuel get on the exhaust and it burns it up. But it has nothing to do with high exhaust temp from a catalytic converter. It has nothing to do with the parameters within the computer system to make sure that that vehicle is running the way that it should in the fuel management side of things.
Exactly.
So you may have that happen, and the manufacturer, the warranty is void.
Absolutely.
The manufacturer is not going to take care of an engine under recall because
you didn't take care of
the car and
That's
you didn't
it.
change the oil. And you can't prove that it was due to high exhaust temp from a catalytic converter.
No, at that point, if you have failed to keep up with the maintenance records on these particular vehicles and something like this happens, and we're talking spontaneous combustion, and Brian will get back into that too here in a minute, because it's the cooling fan resistor overheating and melting that he believes is the actual problem, because they're calling that the issue in specific Kia Fortes, but we're seeing it in the Kia Sportage more than anything. But they're blaming that on the oil pan leaks, but once again, oil will not catch on fire on a cool engine.
Right.
So something inside of these vehicles, and there's the biggest thing that's really irritating the Hyundai and Kia owners that are going through this is insurance is very slow to pay, and if they do pay, it's a very quiet, hush-hush payoff under the table kind of. It doesn't make headline news as to how much these people are getting, the circumstances with which they were receiving the money. They're not telling you exactly what's wrong with the vehicle that they're paying out on.
One of the things that we're probably seeing right now is, first of all, Kia and Hyundai, in the circumstances to take care of this, they have their own shutdown.
That's true.
They have shut down,
Yeah.
and there's still a lot of legal side of things.
Yeah.
And so, Kia or Hyundai cannot go to these families and say, here's X amount of dollars to help cover these expenses while you are out of a home and out of a vehicle and all your damaged goods that were in the vehicle and so on and so forth.
Right.
Because they cannot admit guilt. They are still trying to figure out what's going on.
They have class action lawsuits right now.
But they can't do anything about it.
Yep.
And so that is a big issue right now.
And there's talk of people that have gone through this where the vehicles are totaled, they're undrivable, the engines have done their thing and they've gone and died. They still have to make their monthly payments on it. When I hear those stories, that leads me to believe that, again, this customer failed to keep up on the maintenance, and Kia and Hyundai is going, that's not on us.
No. I still
think it goes back to them not admitting guilt right now?
They can't admit guilt, and they have a shutdown.
But they are
cannot
paying
pay
some
out.
people. They are paying some people, but they're not paying, for instance, the lady whose house caught on fire and every other devastating thing that happened to her. They're not paying her yet. The woman last week whose Sportage went up in their driveway, they're going through some, but Kia blames it on the insurance company. The insurance company's blaming it on Kia. But again, like you said, they're shut down. They can't admit guilt. They've got lawyers working class action lawsuits on all sides of the coins. We're talking 2 manufacturers that are going to have to go through litigation with attorneys. They're going to have to pay out attorneys' court costs and fees on both sides. So, yeah, you're right. They're not going to say they're guilty. Recalls tend to prove that they are, however.
Yes.
So I want to just real quickly, because we've got a few more minutes here, talk about Kia and Hyundai Corporation in general. So if you do own one of these vehicles, definitely check your VIN number to make sure that you're not part of any of these recalls. And let me tell you, Hyundai's recalls go on for days and days and days. Something, as I mentioned, as simple as the windshield wiper, to a seatbelt, to a door latch, to the tires, to the drivetrain, to now we're talking the engines, the electrical system, etc. They're not the greatest cars on the road.
Another thing, we're just going to burn them down and start over.
We don't want to bash them because they've done very well, and a lot of people are very happy with them, and they love their vehicles. We just want you to understand that when NHTSA gets involved very heavily in manufacturers and they're doing investigations that have gone on for 3.5 years and you're not hearing anything, it's because they're having a real issue with the manufacturer to get them to go along with it. You're going to start getting letters in the mail. They started sending out this second recall at the end of April, I want to say. So if you haven't seen it, you'll see it here very shortly. You should see them. But there's also going to be a secondary recall for something that they tried to fix before. And if you're not getting these letters, be proactive and go online and look at it yourself. Forbes magazine, my dad always read that. He's very technological, loves cars, so I grew up on that magazine, and I believe it to be a fairly reputable company. So I went to Forbes.com in regards to automakers with the highest and lowest number of recalls. Mainly, I wasn't desperately trying to focus on Hyundai and Kia, but the numbers jumped out of the page at me. It wasn't something that I was hoping to see. They really do have some issues. When we're talking 15 manufacturers surveyed, and out of 15, Hyundai was the worst with, now this is a number you got to think about for 1 minute. They had 9.9 million recalled vehicles. Okay, and this is from 1986 to 2016 or 14. 9.9 million vehicles recalled. 8.7 million vehicles were sold.
And
vehicles that weren't even sold or even out on the lot yet were recalled. Every single one of them has been recalled.
We did a little research on this, and actually,
because it's hard to believe.
It is not illegal for a dealership to sell a vehicle, a new vehicle, with a recall. It just has to be classified as a used vehicle at that time.
Okay.
Okay, but it is illegal for a dealership to sell a new vehicle with an open recall. So how we get from 9.9 to 8.8 is the fact that the manufacturers produce them, they ship them out, they're sitting at the dealerships. Before they even get sold, they have to go right back in and have the recalls. So they're not even selling the vehicles, and they're already having to take care of recalls.
Yeah.
They take care of a recall, they put it back out on the lot. Before it can be sold again, another recall pops up, it's going right back into the shop. Before you know it, in a year's time, it's no longer a brand new vehicle,
right,
and there's still open recalls with it.
I want to point something else out that I thought was absolutely fascinating that again jumped out at me. You could do your own research. You did get a lot of this from Forbes.com, who in turn got their information from iSeeCars.com, which is an amazing website when it comes to their methodology and how they get these numbers. Recall severity. Now, you would think, and you're probably right in your thinking, when you say the number one recalled vehicle in the world right now is Tesla. And when it comes to recall severity, Tesla tops the list. Out of 18 manufacturers, they are absolutely the worst, with every single vehicle being recalled for the possibility of death, injury, crash, accident, or fire if something happens to that car. Catastrophic, 100%. All Teslas have been recalled for any one of these severity recalls, but right underneath them at number 17 is Hyundai at a 96.8% recall severity, and that is really heavy if you ask me. When Tesla at 100%, and we all know why, electrical fires are very devastating. They're hard to put out. It causes a fire, a crash, limp mode, or even worse. Yeah. And Hyundai right there underneath them at number 17 out of 18 on the recall severity worst scale scenario.
You know, one of the last recalls, just like Wendy had mentioned, the Kia Forte sedan 1.8 liter, having to do with the electric cooling fan resistor. I want to explain some things because you as a occupant, a driver, passenger inside the vehicle, you know about your dash. You know when you turn on your heat or your air conditioning, you turn that knob because you want more air coming in and the fan to blow harder. I'm going to use that as an example to explain what's going on with the electric cooling fan under the hood. Okay, because that electric cooling fan under the hood operates kind of in the same way. As you change that dial from off to 1, 2, 3, 4 being high, you get variable speeds. Well, that fan motor gets variable speeds by restricting through a resistor the amount of voltage or amperage to that actual device. That's how you can get all those different types of speeds. So they actually do this with the cooling fans too. There's usually, on most new cars, you have 2 fans, but each fan is going to be a variable speed fan, just like the fan inside your car as you turn that dial, except this fan under the hood is controlled by various different things and through computer systems and modules. You have one fan that when you turn the air conditioning on, that fan's going to have to come on. And typically that fan is going to stay at its own speed in one speed. That is a one-speed fan because it needs to be able to draw that air in, more air that is being taken in just by driving down the road. Okay, so as you sit at a red light, if you've had an older vehicle and all of a sudden it kind of stopped cooling on you, and it wasn't until you start moving again and forcing that air across the condenser, you really kind of lost that. So this is kind of a creature comfort that they have put in to make sure that you don't lose your air conditioning sitting at a red light, so you don't get all panicky in 2 minutes sitting there. So
hey, in Florida, it happens.
yeah, and in Florida specifically,
Yeah.
especially in the southern hotter humidity areas where these cars are burning up sitting in a driveway, this is where this is kind of relevant. Mm-hmm. So the other side of the fan is controlled for temperature. Okay, so as that vehicle temp gets up to 215, 220, 225, whatever's specified in that particular vehicle for the cooling fans to come on, which, believe it or not, it's about 220 for that to happen. It may not need a full-blown high-speed fan, just like you don't need that in your car. It understands weather, outside temp, ambient temp. It knows how much it needs to cool it down. But if it's a hot day and you're running it hard, or you're sitting in traffic, maybe you're stuck in traffic on the interstate, it knows it needs to increase that fan speed, and they do that through a resistor. So given the fact that these vehicles that are just catching on fire sitting in a driveway, as you know, once you exit the vehicle and you have the key off, and there's even warning signs if you ever raise the hood, it says fans may come on at any time with engine off, with key out of ignition. And that does happen. Just because you parked, you can't just walk away at that point and think that everything's just going to cool down through ambient air on its own. These cooling fans will continue to run, and it is still controlled by the computer system through the resistor as to what that speed of that fan should be. So in the event that these fires that are occurring while just sitting, it could be the fact that through the resistor, either the circuit itself is heating up, which there's another area that I want to mention, because all of these circuits either have a relay or they're fused or got a circuit breaker. And they are designed that once that amperage, if you had a 20 amp fuse in that circuit and 22 amps or 25 amps goes through that, it's going to blow that fuse and it's going to kill that circuit. So it's killing it. But if the resistor is not understanding the fact that it's got to shut the cooling fans down, and they're inside in the house and the car's sitting out there, nobody notices that fan has been running for 15 hours. Something's got to give.
Yeah.
That fan motor is going to burn up, and then from there could ensue a fire under the hood. That's my theory. There's absolutely no report to support that.
Well, they're trying to figure it out, but their solution to it was a knock sensor, not an electrical fix.
For the catalytic converter.
And yeah, they're kind of going in a whole bunch of different directions. I think that's why the National Highway Safety Transportation Administration is having such an issue with the Hyundai Kia situation right now. You know, we're not bagging on them. I'm just saying almost every single manufacturer on the road has a recall. But this one in particular is brand new. It's kind of a big deal. Car fires are not funny, and this is a manufacturer that's actually doing this. They're having this issue.
And I do want to let you know that letter should have been sent out March 29th of this year to anybody that would have been affected. If you drive one of these vehicles and you have not received a letter, you need to do your due diligence.
Yeah.
We feel important to let you know what's going on out there, because we see a lot of Hyundais and Kias. They are very much loved vehicles.
They are.
They get great gas mileage.
They do.
They have awesome warranties. But you have to be able to check yourself. So, Wendy, fire away the website so that they can go.
Well, you want it, it's wherever you can check the VIN number on your vehicle. iSeeCars.com was the one that I was using. That way you can get a lot more information as to what these recalls are actually affecting. But again, there are a lot of them. This one being brand new. A lot of news reports are being done about these spontaneous fires with the Hyundais and the Kias. Again, specific years, makes, and models. All manufacturers have recalls, but do your due diligence. It's actually kind of cool to plug in your VIN number, roll the dice, and see if you've got a recall. I don't have one on my car. Brian has several on his truck. So but it's up to you to get them done. They're done at no cost at the dealerships, but you have to make an appointment. And dealerships here in town, a lot of them will give you a rental car, or they have a shuttle service. If they know that the repairs are going to take a while, they'll take care of you, because they know you need them because you cannot go to any other service place to get a recall done.
Yeah, you just need to contact them.
Yeah.
First of all, find out that the recall part is in stock. You know, honestly, that's the biggest issue that they have found with the Dakota airbags, even though how long it's been going on. And I get phone calls on it, but they can't provide the parts for me.
So we're hoping that with these, if you do have an engine issue or you get the software upgrade for the Kia or the Hyundai that is necessary to kind of dissuade, kind of subdue this issue a little bit, but they will replace the engines if they find out that the computer software upgrade isn't going to fix the problem. But the problem you got to be aware of too is the engine that they're swapping it out for is exactly the same as the one that's in there, and that's where they're having a second recall. So this one's a little tricky, but you can look up your VIN number to see if you're affected. You know,
there's certain recalls out there that you really wouldn't give much thought to. When a recall is out there that you have an opportunity to put a brand new engine in a vehicle that's got 50,000 miles on it or better, that's kind of a recall that you want to take advantage of.
I want to look into that.
Yeah, you may want to go ahead and roll the dice and take that one.
And we have some really good Hyundai Kia dealerships right here in Colorado Springs, so give them a call. And if you want to give us a call, I'll be happy to look up your VIN number too. And you can dial up at Groff's at 719-392-3426, or just put it out there on Facebook for us, and I'll copy and paste it and look it up for you and tell you what you got going on. It is our pleasure to do that for you, and that's why we do the 710 show, is to educate, inform, entertain. We're a little silly at times.
Kind of let you know what's going on out there.
Exactly. We want you to know what's going on, and we want to empower you to understand more about your own vehicle so you're confident and comfortable whenever it needs repairs and services. We're here for you. We're Groff's Automotive. It is the 710 show brought to you by Groff's Automotive. I'm Wendy LaBree with Brian Groff. We'll be back next Saturday at 710 right here on 107.3 and 1530 Mountain Country.
And that is another successful show. No cussing.
That's because we
didn't screw up. I did. I started a video, then had to kill it.
I don't know what we were watching there.
As always, thank you everybody for watching. Certainly appreciate it. And
what's today's date?
Have yourself a good rest of the week. I think it's supposed to be beautiful. So take care and have a good time. See you.